afternoon, everyone. I'm here to talk about a particular animal called the social business. And the framing really of my presentation is, can this animal called the social business, or change incorporated as I like to call it, can it actually help build a better world? And that's actually a topic I'm going to be exploring in around 18 minutes. But let me start with this slide. Let me start with this picture. I actually took this picture, as you can guess, very early this morning. That's 3:53 a.m. and not 3:53 p.m. So I actually just arrived, took a flight, came in from Singapore because I spent a week there. And I spent a week there with these people. I attended a course, got the opportunity to join some really fantastic, like-minded individuals who are using social business in order to build a better world. In fact, just to share with you some interesting people I met. There's Marie So. She's the co-founder of an organization, an enterprise, called Ventures in Development. And what they've done, essentially, is go into a rural part of China and look at a marginalized community and figure out, how can we help improve livelihood in this area? Because the people really there in that part of the world really weren't eating 3 times a day. And as they were going around, they saw, funnily enough, yaks. Yaks. It's like a carabao, but in the Chinese context. But they were figuring out, there's a lot of yaks in this place. And so they were very creative, Marie and her partner, and they said, what can we create out of this? And eventually they created an organization called Shoki, which essentially then, from the yak's milk, created and sold Shoki yak cheese. But they're also looking at the wool. And they saw that, they didn't want to kill the yaks. So they just saw that the yaks were shedding wool, and they then transformed that wool into these kinds of products. And that has actually created sort of a cottage industry in that community. There's another guy, Mikko Vakipartra. And he's a Swedish guy, and he actually created a platform, basically, so that people could, provide small loans to micro-entrepreneurs all over the world, and the platform was the internet. There's Duke Diskul from Thailand, who's doing integrated rural development. There's Anand Kumar, very interesting individual from India. And the problem that he saw really was affordable maternity health care for poor Indians. And so he created a slew of low-cost hospitals, but without compromising quality. And so what I want to suggest is that there's this emerging new approach on helping, on doing good, but at the same time doing well. And this approach is something that's being called social entrepreneurship. You see, the history of this is that there have been traditionally 2 approaches. On the left side, you see NGOs and social development, and you see development programs. On the right, you see business and entrepreneurship, and I know it can be a dirty word, doing corporate social responsibility. I want to suggest that why not merge both? How can we actually get the best of both worlds, and then come up with innovative solutions, but with a business model? Can we do that? And that, my friends, is what I would like to posit as a social business enterprise. And so this was the class, very interesting. But aside from Marie, aside from Duke, there was also this interesting guy, a Filipino, 100% Filipino, and he was also doing something interesting, I hope. And he was very productive during the course, creating things like this. But he was also trying to learn what he could apply to his social enterprise with partners called MicroVentures and Rags to Riches. And I really want to talk a little bit about the work that we do in MicroVentures and Hapinoy. See, MicroVentures, we'd like to believe, is a social business enterprise. Using, again, the best of both worlds between social development and business. And it's interesting because the founding board of directors, this group, actually is half-half. Half came from the social development world, and half are capitalists. And I count myself amongst those in the capitalists. I know it's also another dirty word. But it's interesting because you have a varied level of experience from microfinancing, from NGOs, from government, but also from large multinationals, from advertising, from real estate, from distribution. And it is really this healthy debate of trying to merge both worlds that is really creating certain positive tension in our social enterprise MicroVentures. So what do? We work in microfinancing institutions, and to those who are not very familiar with it, basically it's lending small amounts of money from 60 to 100 US dollars, 3 to 5,000 pesos, to disadvantaged individuals in the belief that out of that small amount, they can create a very small business and pay you back with interest. That's microfinancing, and just so happens that in the country, there's a leading MFI called CARD, or the Center for Agriculture and Rural Development. And Dr. Alep is actually the founder of that organization. He's our vice chairman. And he gave us this insight. You know, in microfinancing, we've perfected the left side. We can lend, and we can collect to the rate of 99.3%. It's true. The poor actually pay better than the rich. The poor actually pay back better than the rich. So all of you should feel bad. Okay? Here's the interesting thing. They had scaled to 1 million micro borrowers. So I liken them to they're really a bank in essence. But when they lend capital, when they lend at 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 pesos, it's not for consumption. No. It has to be productively used capital. And in essence, what the micro-entrepreneur is being asked upon receiving that money is to create a very small business around it. And so Dr. Alep told us, microfinancing, check. But helping out our borrowers, the right side, with a business model, now that they have the capital, what they do with it, that was a challenge. And that was a frontier that they wanted to explore. And that exploration eventually gave birth to our company. And we decided to focus, funnily enough, on the Sari-sari store. And here you see also the experience of the people in the board. Because there was a lot of experience and knowledge about this particular sector. Sari-sari stores, they're the smallest. Literally the smallest unit of retail. You have the large ones. You have the SMs, the Robinsons, the Restants, etc. Go a little bit lower, you can see Mark's Grocery Store. Go a little bit lower, you see 7-Eleven, Mini-Stop. Go a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower, and you see the Sari-sari store. Literally the smallest unit of retail. And it's selling around 500 pesos a day. And you know what? The micro-entrepreneur who runs this, she's earning around 50 to 80 pesos a day. 50 to 80 pesos a day for a full day's work. And she started this with very limited education and know-how. It's very simple. But you see, this marginalized unit of retail, the small units of retail, had inherent potential, despite the fact that from all sides it was besieged. It was too small. But you see, the insight is this one. There are more than 600,000 Sari-sari stores in this country. It has blossomed. It's not a strange sight to see actually 5 Sari-sari stores in a single road. And therein lay the dramatic, powerful insight that as a single unit, it is the smallest. But if you take all of them up together, then what we're really seeing is a very powerful force. And the question we're faced with is, what if? What if we could go from a situation like this, fragmented, individually owned, independent stores, into this? And this really became Hapinoy. Because asking the question, what if we could empower the smallest unit of retail? What if we could empower the micro-entrepreneur? And as it is in these kinds of projects, of these endeavors, you have to go to the communities. You can't do this as an armchair, hey, this is what we're going to do with the stores. No. You have to go deep down to the community. And we actually had to dialogue with them. This is a picture that's 3 years old. And we were showing different things around Hapinoy. And, you know, what they liked, what they didn't like, how it could improve, how it could serve them better. A very conscious dialogue. We talked to a lot of them. And this is Bam Aquino, my partner in crime in this endeavor. From the board, we're the two ones who are really on a day-to-day basis. And we came up with this concept called the Hapinoy store. And even the choice of name is very important because we wanted to send a brand that exuded a positive message. So we just thought, why not create an organized network of stores? And after the dialogue with the stores, they were telling us 4 key things. They wanted more capital. They wanted access to best price. And since we could order in bulk, we could get a little bit of discounts. They also asked us, we want to increase our revenue. We want new businesses. Third thing they asked for is training. And fourth, This was a dialogue with them, the importance of store branding. And we had to build an entire ecosystem in order to support this Hapinoy network. So I'm not going to go through that in a lot of detail, but basically, every single Hapinoy town, we have to worry about all of the different stakeholders. And we decided to focus on the one in the middle, because that became key for us. Essentially, in every town, in every community, we select one mother who has the highest potential to service all of the other Hapinoy stores in her area. And that became the lead store, which eventually we called the community store. And allow me to share the story of Ate Jenny. Ate Jenny started with this small window. And she was selling 1,000 to 2,000 pesos a day. And she was telling us, I want to be a lead store because I want to grow. I want to get my family out and give them a more comfortable life. And so she became a lead store, a community store. Before you knew it, she suddenly transformed into this. So walk-in grocery, she became our community store in Malvar. And her sales had dramatically increased from 1 to 2 to 6 to 7 to eventually 25,000 a day. Sometimes Bam and I joke that she's richer than us, and it's probably true. And she used that capital to actually expand. She had built a second store, and right now she's in the midst of building a third store. Okay? And we're replicating this. In fact, as per our count, we have 150 communities with a community store similar to Ate Jenny that we're trying to help in order to service the other Hapinoy stores, the smaller ones in their vicinity, in their town. And so we're looking at around 10,000 stores. But that's still a drop in the bucket. That number might seem large. But in this kind of endeavor, you need scale. And that's something that we're really looking towards. So if you ask us, where are we headed? And it's these things. One is empowerment. Because this is a social business enterprise. And if we only measure the increased incomes, then we're not being true to our nature. So a big part of this really is that added self of dignity from each Hapinoy store owner, that they are now managing a business. In fact, I'll never forget it. In that dialogue, in the earlier picture, when you were asking, what do you think of Hapinoy? Suddenly a mother from the back said, I love this concept. And she told us something very touching. It was this. Dati, ang tingin lang sa atin, mangungutang. Before, people just thought of us as people who were borrowing loans, who were needy people. But because of Hapinoy, tingin na sa atin, negosyante. From mangungutang to negosyante. And that's a powerful insight. Because suddenly they begin to see that this is not a tool for survival. This is their own business that they will grow and they will pass on to their families. And we see that in the case of Tita Susan, our community store owner in Bae, who, without her knowledge, had actually created a calling card, which she gives out to different clients. See that level of empowerment and pride that we see from our store owners. Expansion. This is about scale and evolution. And I want to spend a little bit of time on this. Because the way we look at Sari-sari stores is not where they are now. It's where they can go, what they can become. And we partnered with Smart, who thankfully enough is a sponsor, so I can talk about them. We started looking at different ways to evolve the stores. And so the easiest thing was to sell cell phone airtime. But then we went out of that and said, why not put computers in our top stores? Because they were already, at that level of sales volume, and we just couldn't write on it, the back of the carton. So we were looking at that, and we had to put computers. And this is still a very, very tricky process, by the way. But then we experimented. How can we make more money out of this? How can we generate more income for Nanay? And then we thought, a lot of people now in those communities have camera phones, low-end camera phones. And then we said, why not Happy Prints? And I tell you, the margins from this one are better than those that we get from multinationals. Because we're suddenly evolving into different kinds of products and services. So evolution is the key. So if you see a Hapinoy, which is like a 7-Eleven, one day you'll have a Hapinoy that's like a Mercury drug, a Hapinoy that's like a mini carinderia, etc., etc. It's all of these different verticals that they could evolve into. And who knows, maybe our Hapinoy community stores as recycling centers. Again, it is, the potential is just too wide. And as we rethink that, we wonder, are we just building an organized network of Sari-sari stores? And I submit that we're not. In fact, this is the image in our heads when we talk about the Hapinoy network. We think of it as highways. And that might seem unintuitive, but really, we are building highways in order to reach this segment of the population that is so far underserved. We're building the highways to reach the so-called base of the pyramid in order to create products and services that could either enhance their income or improve their lives. And that's why, through this work, we're building an integrated supply chain. Because once you have distribution, once you have retail, then it's easy to work with other nanays in the communities who are making their products and just carry them in the stores. This is where we're headed. Basically, building all of these Hapinoy communities onwards towards what we call one Hapinoy nation. And hopefully, through this endeavor, slightly help in terms of that socioeconomic pyramid. But as I reflect on Hapinoy, just a segue, is that I look at social enterprises, look at the examples earlier, and I look at large-scale businesses. And I wonder if there's a point wherein those two things can converge. And I submit that this is what we would now see as a social business. Large companies, large corporations, and social enterprises scaling and meeting somewhere in the middle, wherein it's not just about money. It's not just about financial value. It's not, in fact, about GDP. I like the gross national happiness. It's not just about that. It's also about social value. Because big business has arguably wrought a lot of bad things amongst the good things it's done. Social, financial, and environmental crises. And I really think the landscape is shifting. The landscape is shifting because we see corporations getting enlightened. A couple of weeks ago, Ayala basically said that our core strategy now is sustainability. And whether they'll stay true to that, still, we'll see in the future. But at least they're making that conscious step. You see Grameen, arguably the founders of microfinancing, Muhammad Yunus, looking at these kinds of models of engaging large companies like Danone and creating yogurt that would provide nutrition to children and providing livelihood. You see this guy, Shai Agassi, who is essentially building a large corporation to end the world's addiction to oil by introducing electric cars. And so as I think about these things, social enterprises and big-scale businesses, thinking not just about financial value, but also social value, and I feel optimistic about the future. I feel optimistic about the future because I really believe that there's a revolution. We're at a tipping point that could change the face of business forever. And it's exciting because it's the social business revolution. I invite all of you to play in it as well. Thank you very much.